Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Change Physician Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady, as well as a returning guest, Dr. Anna Cabeca. And Anna is going to be filling in on some very interesting parts that a lot of us think about. Maybe some of us are scared to do, but depending on what your practice or business are, it can really make or break your future in a lot of ways. And that is hiring well. So before we begin, Anna, would you just tell us what hiring well means?
Being able to take some workload off of you, frankly, people that you trust, who have your back, that are committed to the same mission, passion, and purpose that you have. And it means that, you have a good deal of liberation so that you can freely practice in your creative bliss and your, with your strengths. And I've run the gamut. I've hired unwell and I've hired really well. And it's been a learning process, definitely a couple decades worth. So I think I've got it down now. I've just hired really well.
And I want to kind of stretch that out a little bit, because the Change Physician audience, we're a different group. We have people who are trying to do new and different things in clinical practice, and we have people that are doing things outside of your traditional medical practice. And what I really appreciate about your expertise, and I want to make sure that the listeners are aware of, is you hired as a private practice physician in your old group, as well as in an outside business where you're sort of optimizing your clinical skills. So have you found then that the same principles work in both worlds? Is it like a general set of principles, or is there one that you would use in maybe the private practice clinical setting versus in sort of the, I don't know, I'm just going to call it the business world?
Yeah, I think it's a general, it is across the board, right? It's across the board. And I think that a lot of times, because as physicians, especially when you're transitioning, like you hire, you hire nurses, you hire clerical staff, you don't think, oh, well, I can do that too, or let me do that, right? You don't think that. Then you go into the non-traditional model where we're online, we're creating a website, we're creating funnels, we're creating marketing material, and we think, oh, I have to do all of this. I don't know. Anyone else have felt that? It's true, but we would never do it in our clinical practice. We wouldn't do our nurses' jobs. They're like, last person I want to be, I don't want to be drawing blood or taking blood pressure. I mean, seriously, I'm going to do my surgeries and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it really well. I'm going to do my clinical practice. I'm going to do that really well, but you don't want me answering the phone.
Yeah.
So that's the same is true for our virtual practices, our virtual systems, our virtual marketing, we want our voice there. We want people that are with us, but we want them to be experts in their particular area. And we need to be able to trust that. Now, there is that whole concept of, as we're a physician, we, feel it's necessary. And I have to understand every parts of the business, right? Like in the operating room, you want to know how the anesthesiology machine works. You want to be able to get your own, your instruments, their names, where they are on the table, et cetera, right? You want to be able to operate and do every part of that, but you stick to, you focus on your expertise because you've hired well, or the people, you trust the people to do their roles as they need to do it. And I think that's really important. Understand what has to be done. Understand a good job from a bad job. And I keep thinking the OR today. I don't know why I'm thinking about the OR, but like being handed an instrument, right? Being palmed an instrument, handed an instrument. You got that. You're ready to go. It's a handoff, and it's the same. It's the same in our virtual practice. We need that handoff. We know what we need to do. We know what's being done well and what's not being done well. And that's important. That took me a while to figure out. I felt like I needed to micromanage every detail and I needed to oversee, but I didn't need to micromanage. And letting go of that control in this virtual space saves me a lot of time and money. And our time is money. Our time is money. When we're able to connect like this, we're influencing and moving forward our mission. But if we're in if I'm creating copy, that's not my forte, or I'm creating, a social post, that's not my forte. I'm there. I know what represents me. I know what doesn't represent me. But I think it's really important to be able to understand what you love and what's worth your time, and then let the other things go so you can soar, so you can scale, and with scaling, profit.
When you're talking about hiring, one of the things that I thought was really interesting there was being familiar. Like, and you're using that OR environment or your clinical environment as you need to know basically what your anesthesiologist is doing. You need to know what the tools are, what the scrub tech's going to do and things like that. What do you think though, or how did you get the familiarity in the online space to be able to hire well in that space? Because that's a different set of skills to have, where you now have to be aware of a different environment, a different skill set than most of us in medicine. I would assume probably a lot of people in medicine aren't even aware of what those skills are. So how did you kind of get a little bit of handle on that so that you can then see, that you can make those decisions on how to hire well in that environment?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think it's, part of it is knowing the reputation of someone that you're hiring. And I think in practice, sometimes we think, okay, you got the personality, I can teach you the trade. And that's in the online space, we don't have the time to do that. We're not going to teach and hold hands. So you want to hire a team. You want to hire A team players, like A players, not B, not C. You want to hire A players. So based on what they've done, their reputation and recommendations, their availability, because some great people are fabulous, but they put you on the back burner for some of their higher, bigger clients. And their rating, like if you're hiring initially, you're doing a small job and you're wanting something done and you're hiring off Upwork or maybe for customer service or you want to look at 5-star ratings, people that have done the same field in a similar capacity and have 5-star ratings. And so that's a good place to start. And I like Upwork when you're hiring initially, like if you just need contract help, because you can go through and see what they're doing clockwise, time-wise, and there's a lot of visibility to that, and that's nice, and that's a contractor, and then maybe you want to hire them on full-time afterwards, but that's a good place to start based on ratings. And you want to look at people with a lot of experience, a lot of hours under the belt, a lot of reliability. And two, who ask around, who has a website that you love, who did it, who has a product that you love, who helped them with that, who and asking friends. Don't be afraid to ask. It's not like our competitive world, we're worried about referrals. We're in a collaborative world. My friend JJ Virgin says rising tide floats all boats, right? The rising tide floats all boats. So when we work together, when we collaborate, we help each other. There's plenty of people that need help. So the more of us out here helping others, getting this word out, getting our messages out in a positive way helps a lot more people. So this collaborative event. So I think in what I've noticed, especially in this switching to online, it's like, okay, the sense of being in a small community and having competition, it's not the case. I mean, we can be collaborative, and we should be collaborative even in our small communities as much as possible. I practiced in a small town. It was hard. I mean, there was competitive, there was that cutthroat, it's just a nasty place to be. That's not the environment that I, work well in or want to be in. So collaborate, and then you'll have people collaborating with you too. So that's why I feel like, okay, ask me my secrets. I'll share them with you. There's not a secret. I want each and every one listening to have, their mission and love what they're doing in a way they love doing it, right? They have the freedom to do that. I shared that I'm from Georgia. I've been there 21 years. I ended up in Georgia from National Health Service Corps scholarship. And I'm in Dallas now because my daughter's doing rodeo at a ranch. I have the liberty now to work from anywhere, and I'm able to be a rodeo mom as well as run my business. Yeah. So it came with some ups and downs during the time. And I think micromanaging was the downfall for me. As I don't know, anyone else OCD out there, right? We really,
never heard of it.
Never heard of it, right? Like,
I'm kidding.
We couldn't have got here without it. That's for sure.
That's right.
But I think always recognizing what are my strengths, what are my abilities, and, a quick overview of where we want to go, what direction we're taking, and the right people, the right pieces in place to help you get there. And virtual assistants are great, virtual executive assistants, some of these virtual contractors, customer service. And we hired a lot virtually. I now have a virtual chief operations officer. She's in Utah. I'm in Georgia. We have a distribution facility in Georgia, and in Missouri, we contract with a facility in Missouri. So having that assistance, and it took me a while to find that right person, but that's just enabled me to feel this, that another aspect of the business that can be taken from me. But yet I know enough. I know through the stages, what markers to look at, key performance indicators to watch, so that I know that we're continuing to progress and things aren't falling apart on the back end. Yep, I've been embezzled. Yep, I've had really terrible management in the past. I've had, we will experience that in life, but sometimes in our careers, if we're not watching those key performance indicators, and we don't have that overview or those checks and balances in place. And that can be really simple to put in place too.
Since you brought it up, the key performance indicators are which took me a while once I got in this little business world. KPI is the other term they use. What are some of the things specifically, you kind of touched on them, are there key ones that you definitely, without a doubt, look at every time?
Well, I think it's important to look at a few things over time. So it depends on what part of the business. So I think in looking at your virtual business is like how long, like certain things, how long are people staying on your page? How far are they watching through your videos? What's the click-through rate of your emails and open rate of your emails? And your customer retention rate when you're having your clients, how long are they with you? For me, those are really important key performance indicators. Now we look at the bottom line. We also look at our gross profitability, our gross profit, and our net profitability, and to see how is that on a percentage basis. So I had some inaccurate accounting, and we weren't looking at that accurately, and things were miscategorized. And so it turns out that, we were underestimating the cost of much of our tech. And so we've been doing a lot of redundancy versus having it streamlined. So I think keeping it simple in the internet space is really, really important. And one red flag is when you have consultants and they say you need this, that, and the other thing, really understand what they're talking about, because that's where I was just like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Let me get this program, this system, that program, this system. Before you know it, you're on subscription for 6 figures of programs, and you didn't need any of that. So I think it's really important. So I use Shopify, and I use Shopify for my shopping cart. I use Shopify for my blog as well, but it doesn't play with SEO as well as WordPress does. So there's this issue. I was on WordPress, switched to Shopify. I'll probably switch my blog back to WordPress. So if you're starting, you're like, oh, well, I need all these bells and whistles. You don't. Use a WordPress site for your blog and your content. Shopify is a great shopping cart, and I've used many different ones. And then you want a content management system that you're using to do your emails, your autoresponders. Maybe something like MailChimp is where you're at, is what you need, but maybe you need something. We used Ontraport, we've outgrown it, so we're switching to ActiveCampaign after much research, and there's another one called Klaviyo that was a close runner-up for ActiveCampaign. So those things for our part of our communication system with our clients has been part of our growth process, learning what system, what's the easiest, makes the most sense for us, and what's the most cost effective too.
So of all those programs and that you're using, especially with WordPress, one thing that I had experienced that if you're not doing it yourself and knowing code, it can be quite expensive to get someone else to do this on a frequent basis and monitoring things. Is your virtual assistant or your virtual person helping you with all of these particular things like WordPress and whatnot? And how much are you involved with that yourself? Because I keep wondering how do you know how to hire the right person to help you with the same voice that you're trying to project to the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's like always it's, your brand. First, identifying your brand voice, your presentation style. And if you're using a writer to help you, that they completely get that. I review every piece that goes out as me.
Great.
And then with, as far as the presentation of it, like that's the tech side, hiring someone to do that, first of all, looking at what you like and using that as your template. We don't have to recreate the wheel. It doesn't have to be that fancy. Simple. It seems to be better from the consumer side of things too. Keeping it really easy for people to get information. I've been through a few renditions of my website too, to where it's like back to as simple as possible now. Clear information, where to go, versus trying to give out so much information and so much details and so many things at one time. It's confusing. And so keeping it simple is really, I can't emphasize that enough. Keeping it simple, keeping your message consistent, like what you're doing here, right? You're very consistent message, consistent a purpose in your messaging, and that's attractive. You're going to attract people that need to hear from you, and keeping it focused versus being everything to everyone. I was just invited to a summit, and it's like, I just went, all things for everybody is the name of the summit. It's not, it's something like that though. but I'm like, okay, well, it's confusing. Like there's financial piece, there's a real estate piece, there's a health piece, and that's confusing. So I think it's important to also recognize that with our information that we're giving, how we do that.
So keeping things, again, return to that simplicity part. What would you consider and I'm going to do specifically for the online space? You're moving in the online space. What was the first hire that you did? And knowing what you know now, would you have made that same hire, that particular position, or was there something else that you would recommend as a first start? Like what's the first like vital hire, do you think?
Yeah, I think my first vital hire was someone named Julia Zaslow, and she helped me build out my first online program. So she took from my recordings, my voice, my conversation with her, and I did all my PowerPoints, live presentations, but she took the content, wrote the copy so that it was marketing in my voice, and created the web page and the emails to go with it and to follow up through the program. So hiring her was a big investment, but I hired right, because that program, I just retired it this year. I created it in 2010. So it's lasted, repaid me in numerous times. There's a free lead gen, like you opt in for Feel Good, Look Good Secrets webinar, and then you take the 6-week program. And the 6-week program was a simple delivery system that she built out at that time. So someone who created the funnel essentially and the delivery of the program in a evergreen. And that's something that's really key, is that you want it so you don't have to recreate it every time you go through it, in an evergreen fashion. So we went through it, made any tweaks we needed to make, and then had it on auto delivery or a couple times a year where we launched it. And that was critical, because this is like, okay, what do I want everyone to know when they come? And this is like why I'm saying, be very specific, because I was, women's restorative health. Like, where do you go with that? It's very broad. Now I'm like, we're going to talk about the vagina, it's very specific, right? So, but it's that concept of what I want every person to know, what I'm saying over and over again in the office. And there's that free component, and then go ahead and come on and do more. Follow through the program. And I had someone build out the infrastructure for that. I reviewed every email, and I did the online education myself, and that was put into an evergreen system. And so, they found that to be the best hire that I did, because that freed me up tremendously, because they had that 1 hour of information I want everyone to know. And then they had the course that they pay for that continues to produce money and income, but also gives that value to that client so that they progress rapidly and they're investing in their health in a very efficient way. So that was probably the best thing that I did.
And that makes a lot of sense. I'm just sitting here from a first hire, because it sounds almost like a contract position, or it wasn't something
contract
you can't.
One time. Mm-hmm.
But you did it, and you're hitting so many different things. One, as we had talked about in our initial episode with you, you're creating an onboarding kind of program where people are now being indoctrinated in a good way in the terminology and what you're focusing on. So you're knocking that out of the park. The second part is you have the course, and you're already having everything set up for the paid program. So then it becomes both lead generation as well as conversion into a customer, and that ongoing relationship with them. So that you have a potential to have them in your tribe or recurring revenue. So it's like you hit all, three. It's like the trifecta right there with the first hire. And I was expecting you to say something like, "Oh, it was a virtual assistant, and they did this and this and this." So thank you. Wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah. I'll expand on that too, because when you create that course, you're also telling your clients what to do next. Like, these are the products I use. These are the products I have or I created. These are the supplements. This is the, because I had trouble with that initially. And I think we talked about this as physicians. We don't want to be salespeople, but we sell surgery. We write prescriptions. I mean, our patients come to us because they want a solution. Don't deprive them of that solution. Right? Don't deprive them of that solution. And a friend of mine, and she runs a huge PR company, and she was my patient to begin with. And she said, I'm here to hear from you. Tell me what I need. Don't tell me what you think I can afford. Tell me what you think I need, what I need. And, and that's it. Just having that. I know that everyone needs Mighty Maca Plus, for instance. That's a holistic formula. And everyone needs maybe an omega-3 fish oil, or at certain times a probiotic, or they need this, next Julva. My products that I created as solutions for me, my clients need those. Don't be afraid to tell them what they need, what their next step is, or what the solution is, or, what you believe is so helpful, and how you can tell if this is right for you, and how you can tell if it's not. Many people leave out that part, and I'm guilty of that too. But why I believe it's, who it's right for and who it's not. And I think that's a really, that gives people a lot of clarity when you do that too. So you're giving them education, you're giving them resources, you're giving them next steps, and you're giving them products to continue succeeding with.
Yeah. By the way, the Mighty Maca, I just got mine in the mail, so just had to add that in.
Yay.
Actually,
never leave home without it.
Yeah, and she didn't tell me to say that, y'all. So now the next thing I wanted to make sure that we covered is, how do you hire when you hire someone? If it's going to be like a long-term, not just this one time, like for a course, is there a probationary period or a time frame that you give them to kind of see if you made the right choice, or how do you decipher, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think, what's the saying? Hire slow, fire fast. It's so true. And often it's it often is the other way around. It's like we hire fast, and then we hold on to them thinking they're going to get better. They're eventually it's going to work out. And I think the first thing you need to do is really outline the processes that are needed to be handled for this role, and then find the right person that fits that role, versus finding a person and then finding, the best job for them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and I've been guilty of this too. I've learned, I've learned all these through experience, but finding what do I need handled? What are the roles that we need to have accomplished? And who is the right person, very specifically, who fits that role? And interview a number of people and check references. And there's some good con artists out there. Yeah. So check some references and give them a task. Often many of the first hires will say, here's this initial project, or here's 1, 2, 3 scenarios. How would you handle this scenario? And I think that's really fair to do, and think of that in real, how it pertains to you, your business. How would you handle this scenario and this situation? And that way you're able to see their decision-making process if there is a problem in something. I'm thinking right now, say for example, we're having someone create our shopping cart. Well, what happens if the credit card processor fails, or the merchant, merchant account, we're having issues with that? Do you know what to do in those instances? And walk me through the process. And something like, I have no idea. It's just one of those things that happen. But, in hiring the right person for that shopping cart, you want to know that too. And so I think too, one thing that we experienced recently, and we just hired a fractional chief financial officer. So, we share him and his team with other businesses, and that's a great hire. And I should have hired them a long time ago. I didn't know there was such a thing as a fractional chief financial officer, but I'm able to look at our numbers and see what is most profitable, what is and what I love the most. But seeing what's most profitable helps me identify where we continue to focus, and continuing to do the parts that maybe it's not profitable, but I love doing it, like my podcasting. I love doing it. And so and just I know that I'm doing it for enjoyment, interaction, and just that education, inspiration, and some entertainment. So, and that's perfectly fine. I think there's a reason for that. Maybe we can't directly see that that's profitable, but it's relational, and that's really important for me and my business and my brand. We're a relational brand, and as the girlfriend doctor. And so looking at that and looking at those areas of the business so that you can focus on it. I will tell you this, and this saved me a lot of, this will save anyone a lot of time, but I know initially, especially as a functional medicine doctor, I had like over 30 key products that I liked for clients. Each one had a different scenario, right? For my cervical pap, for healthy cervical paps, I want you to do this. For breast health, I want you to do this. For fibroids, I want you to do this. For detox, I want you to do this. For MS, I want you to do that. Everything, right? Well, when you go to the online space, stay really, really focused. Stay really, really focused. 1 to 3 maximum to start. And I went from that 33 to 5. My profit soared. And it was focused. It was clear. There wasn't confusion. Sometimes you get to a store and you're like, oh my God, there's so much. It's like going to TJ Maxx and it's like, oh gosh, there's so much. I don't know what to do. Let me get out of here. I'll go to the small boutique. So for example, the same, you don't want your website to be that. You want to be simple, very clear, very targeted. And definitely when you're starting. And I think that a good example in the space is Bulletproof. Dave Asprey did this really well, right? What's he known for his coffee, but now he has a whole line of products, right? A whole line of products. So he expanded after extensive initial focus, years. So that's a constant lesson that I try to fall back on, but I'm always like, chances, maybe not. Scale back. And that's okay, because there's a allowance in your business that here's a focus, 80%, here's my 10%, let's play with this, and I think that's okay, because that's the entrepreneur. We don't know. Like Jolva for me was, I really want this. I don't know if there's an audience for it. I know my clients want it and there's a specific niche here. Well, that blew up. We have 100,000 customers worldwide because I needed it and I had patients that needed it. And it resonates and it works. And that is, that soared my business, and there's no competition. And that's a huge thing. Like, what works for you? What do you need to create for you to help you and your patients? And that's an education product. That's a physical product. That's, whatever else it may be.
Yeah. This is all amazing. Anyone that's listening, there's so much wisdom in what is being said right here. And I really like, Anna, the points you've made, not necessarily directly, but indirectly, on how you need to not just go through the task list and do. You need to stop back and reflect on not just evaluating the business, but yourself and what your strengths are, and what are the things that you need to be doing, and just so many aspects to where is it that you need help, and if you're going to hire somebody, you kind of need to know what your strengths are and understand yourself in order to make that first step into getting additional assistance. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm going to expand on that a little bit too, because what you were talking about, making a systemized process before you even made your hire. And what I like, so you have to know what you're doing, or at least what your end result is going to be. You kind of writing out the process. So now that helps you when you're actually hiring for someone, because now you have specificity. Where, you talk about specificity with the internet. You have specificity with the position that you're looking for. So you're maybe potentially less likely to get when you bamboozled by someone who talks a good talk, but actually can't provide the skills that you're looking at. And then the other aspect of that, though, is if you end up having to, if they're an A player and they move or evolve and move beyond you, is because you have those procedures in place and documented, it's going to make your next hire, I would assume, probably easier in a lot of ways to do while maintaining the mission of your business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that documentation along the way, that's also where you always think each position within your business, you have we call it the hit by the bus procedures, the SOPs. And I think that's really important because it takes so much time, and now we can have Google Drive with video trainings and, have those systems in place for your practice, for your hires, so that it's an easier transition, easier onboarding, because often the person leaves and they leave with all the intellectual property you've given them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really good point.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we're coming up to the end of our interview here. Kevin, do you have another question, or do you want to wrap this up?
So many, as always. Like, how do we ever keep our episodes within a certain time frame? I think it's just because we have hard stops because everybody's busy. But so much. Thank you so much, Anna, for coming on today.
My pleasure.
I'm going to let Melissa close it out here and,
Sure.
and provide any words of wisdom she has.
Yeah. No, I really liked the quote, and I'm such a firm believer in this collaboration, and you're doing that just by being here and being so generous with your time. And the quote that you said that JJ Version uses, I'm not sure if it's her original quote, but it's good for all of us. That rising, you said, rising tide floats all boats.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And I think that's a good way to end this, because I think, if you hire the right person, and instead of you doing it all yourself and collaborating with somebody else that you trust and or anybody else, that it only brings everybody else's business up and really serves the world in a better play, to a better level. And so thank you for sharing all those little pearls of wisdom that so many of us need to put into effect. And for the listeners out there, I am Dr. Melissa Cady with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and with our lovely guest, Dr. Anna Cabeca. And until next time, you all take care.